Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how I clean my AR-15. So the way that I clean it might differ from other videos that you've seen or other instruction that you've had. Anyways, this is how I clean mine. So first thing that I'm going to do is check to see that it's unloaded. As you can see, it is. I'm going to pop this pin in the rear, pull it out the other side. Then I'm going to pop the front pin. It'll come. Okay, there we go. You set the lower receiver aside. Deal with that later. Then we're going to pull the charging handle, which pulls out the bolt carrier group. Take the charging handle out. Also set that aside. Take the whole upper. Set that over here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is grab my little parts tray right here, and I'm going to pull out my firing pin retaining clip. Now, some of these will come out easy. Some of them are hard to do. This particular BCM, if you can see it, it's pretty gross. Bravo Company bolt carrier group is easy to pull out. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to smack the bolt carrier on the table, and out comes the firing pin. We'll place that in our tray. So now we're going to take our cam pin, turn it sideways, lengthways like this, so that it clears the gas key, which is this right here. Pull that one out, pull the bolt straight out. Okay, so you have your extractor that's right here. We're going to take the firing pin retaining clip and put a little bit of pressure on the back side here with our finger, thumb, push that out this way. Now, if your retaining clip is spread out too much, you can use the firing pin, you can use a knife, you can use a punch, a screwdriver, whatever to get that out. All right, so we're going to take our extractor off. This one happens to have a little O-ring right there on the spring. I've had good luck with that. All right, so this is all done. Now we have our bolt carrier that we're going to not strip down anymore. Do not take these screws out unless you are repairing your bolt carrier. So leave those where they are. If yours is not staked on the sides like this, then you might want to look at buying a new bolt carrier, because quality bolt carriers are staked on the gas key retaining bolts right there, or screws, or whatever you want to call them. All right, so we'll set that aside, set this aside with our charging handle over there. All right, so now that we have our upper receiver stripped down, we're going to clean our hands off a little bit. Usually I wear gloves to do this because I've been exposed to so much lead and solvents and everything. That's why my hands kind of look all gross. But for the purposes of this video, I decided to sacrifice a little bit of my health, and we'll roll with that. So we're going to take our bore snake. If you don't have one of these, get one. I know that there are companies that make bore snakes out there that say that you have to put a little bit of solvent on the front part right here. I don't do that. I haven't had an issue. Usually what I do is I just drop it down the chamber. Try to get that so you guys can see it. So I drop it through the chamber. When it comes out the other end, I run it through once, maybe twice, because this rifle has probably about 1,000 rounds through it since I've cleaned it. I'll run it through twice. Run that down there and pull it through once again. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to put it up. We're going to put the muzzle up against the light so that we can see through it. make sure that there's no obstructions in there, and that looks like a real nice clean bore. Okay, so from there we'll set this aside, grab our lower receiver, push in on your buffer a little bit, push down on the buffer retaining piece there. The buffer will come straight out. All right, so these usually don't get too dirty unless you have like lots and lots of rounds through them and they get neglected. What I usually do is just kind of wipe it off a little bit. And that seems to be okay. Now I do lubricate this. Some people don't, but I like to. This is a Geisley braided spring. I think they call it a 42 spring or something like that. So usually what I do is I take a little bit of CLP in my little oiler bottle right here. Put a little bit in my palm. Kind of work it around a little bit, and then I just work the spring back and forth to give it a little bit of lubrication. If you want, you can pull the buffer out, oil it down a little bit, put that back together, just like that. And we will reinsert that into the receiver extension. Okay. Let's wind this back up. And we'll bring everything into the shop, and we're going to use the solvent tank. So not everyone has a solvent tank, but if you've got like $200 to spare, it's well worth getting one. So I'll show you what that is. So we've got our parts here. Can't forget the bolt carrier and finger snap. Okay, so now that we're at the solvent tank, what I like to do is basically take the bolt carrier and just kind of hose it down with the solvent. Take our brush, which you just like, you can use any old brush, but this is like a solvent cleaning or solvent tank cleaning brush. So we'll just go ahead and scrub it all down. Get all of that nasty stuff off of there. And this is just general cleaning, for a few thousand rounds or something like that. Not going to break everything down and shove anything down the gas key and all that, because the solvent does a pretty good job. So I'll just wipe this down real good. Rinse it out. Even just dunk it in the solvent. And there we are. So we'll take the charging handle, kind of wipe that down. None of this needs to be perfect because it's a gun. It's a simple machine. All right, take our bolt, do the same thing, get it a little wet. Now, sometimes you will end up with lots of neglect or lack of cleaning, maybe really dirty ammo. You'll end up with a lot of carbon buildup. Right around here, just take like a brass brush, scrub it up real good. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Scrub, scrub, scrub. Now the back of the bolt right here on this, I think they call it a bolt tail. They make specific cleaning devices to get all of this carbon off of there. It's not super important that you get it super clean. Just kind of scrub it up a little bit. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Rinse it off, give it a little dunk. I don't know if you guys can see that off camera, but I'm just dunking it in the solvent. Clean that up. All right. Extractor. Try not to lose the little O-ring right here. Just kind of give that a little soak, little rinse, little brush. And I understand that not everyone has a solvent tank that they can do this in, so you can just use DLP or like Hoppy's number 9 or whatever. So I do take a brass brush, kind of scrape the inside of the extractor a little bit just to get any crud out of there that would interfere with the extractor grabbing a hold of the rim of the case. Rinse that off. Cam pin, same thing. Give it a little scrub. Like I keep saying, if you don't have a solvent tank, just wipe everything down. This little pin right here, just going to go ahead and get it wet, put it back down. Same thing with the firing pin retaining clip, just get it wet, put it back down. We don't want to lose those, so we're going to keep them there. Firing pin, give it a little scrubby scrub. Yes, after a while, you're going to get all kinds of crud built up on the back of the firing pin right here. If it bothers you, it becomes an issue. Take a brass brush. I get these on Amazon, like a 3-pack for I think maybe $5, $10, something like that. It's been a while. These last a long time. Just go ahead and scrub it. Look at that. Super clean, right? So rinse the firing pin off. And just one little thing that I like to do is flip my paper towel around, put everything back in there. Leave these out. Okay, so whenever you're working with solvent, just make sure that you wear gloves because you do not want this stuff on your hands. I've spent several years, many years, with it on my hands, and it will completely eat away the oil-producing parts of your skin. I'm not a doctor, I don't know, but make sure that you use this, or use gloves. All right, so we'll turn this off, and next thing you know, we'll be back in the office with a finger snap. So I'm back in the office now, and if you want to use some little cleaning brushes like this, go on there, yep. So you can, this big one is for the upper receiver. You can go ahead and scrub like this. I kind of find these, I don't want to say useless, but they're just kind of not really necessary for these guns. So what I like to do is just take a rag and just kind of wipe out all the crud that's in there. And you'll hear me say this over and over again. Guns do not need to be super clean. So as long as you wipe the majority of the crud off of there, they'll work just fine. Shove this rag to the back. Pull it out, and no, it's not extremely clean, but it doesn't have to be. If you want, you can take and come in here, whatever. All right, so they do make things like a chamber brush that you can put onto here and run it into the back of the gun, into the chamber like this. Try and twist it around. If you've got really built up crud in there, you can use one of these. I generally do have a lot of built up crud in there, and I don't typically use these, but well, I did today for the purpose of this video. So that looks pretty good. They make these that go in and clean up like the throat, the chamber, and whatever, but as long as you have a good bore snake and you run it through there once in a while, seems to work all right. In the military, we used to get totally wrapped around the axle as far as putting our fingers in here and Q-tips and all kinds of other crap just to get all the crud out of what we used to call the star chamber. As you can see, it hopefully you can see that. Kind of looks like a star in there. But you don't really need to do that. As long as it's semi-clean, you'll be fine. Okay, so we've got the upper receiver pretty much cleaned. The lower receiver, leave it alone. If you have a whole bunch of crap in here, hose it out with like a can of, I think Birchwood KC makes gun scrubber. I've got some of that, or honestly carburetor cleaner, brake clean works well. Just maybe blow all the crud out of there. That'd be about it. I also have a drop-in trigger, sealed bearings, things like that. So you don't need to get too crazy about the lower part. If you want to, you can, just like any part of the rifle. If you want to get in here with Q-tips and clean out the chamber, totally can. When I was in the Army, I used to, you know, bend a Q-tip like this, and we'd have to go in and clean out all the crap out of there, which, like I said, you don't have to do. But if you want to, that's okay. They will run dirty. All right, so that's pretty much it as far as the upper receiver goes. What I'm going to do now is wipe down the bolt carrier group components. Sometimes I'll use compressed air to blow these out with. You can, if you have access to it. Like I said, I usually do, but we'll just wipe it out for today. Just a good old wipey wipe. There we go. It's not going to hurt anything if there's still a little bit of solvent left in there, because we're going to lubricate the gun. If you want, give it a good blow. See some of the stuff come out of the sides. Whatever, it's fine. Charging handle, wipe it off. Make sure that you get up in here. And then obviously around where your fingers go, because you don't want a bunch of solvent on your fingers. That's why I'm still wearing gloves. Wipe it down. Bolt, same thing. Wipe all the solvent off. Just like this. If you do have compressed air, which I do, but I'm just not using it for video purposes, we'll use it. Firing pin, wipe it off. Set that aside. Cam pin. Now remember that the firing pin does go through this little channel right here. Maybe give that a little blow. Extractor. Dry it off. Retaining clip. Dry it off. Same with the extractor. Retaining pin. All right. So now we'll go ahead and lubricate. I guess it won't stand up. There we go. So we're just going to lubricate everything, put it back together. I like to use Black Rifle Balm. This is one of my favorite gun lubricants. If you can find it, great. If you can't, that's fine. Use CLP, Slip 2000 works, Lucas gun oil works, whatever. Doesn't really matter. From my experience, gun lube is gun lube. So go ahead and use motor oil if you want to. All right, so we'll take the charging handle and some Black Rifle Balm. See where the wear marks are right here. It's all worn down on the side. Go ahead and put a little bit of that on there. Smooth it around with your finger. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just go ahead and get it nice and lubed. Okay, so we'll put that back in place. You might be able to hear my rooster crowing. His name's Johnny, if you're curious. Okay, so pull this back out. Now we'll take the bolt, the extractor, a little pin. Just put these in dry. Don't put any lube on them. Hopefully you guys can see this. My camera skills suck. You got to push down before you put the little pin in, just like that. Take a little bit of lube. Right here is where the bearing surface is. So just go ahead and coat that. The one thing that I found with AR-15s or M16s, M4s, whatever, is the wetter the better. So just go ahead and smoosh that around in there. Leave the gas rings alone. If you want, which sometimes I do, which I'll do right now, you can just put a real light coat along where the bolt interfaces with the chamber. And that rooster is going nuts. Just gonna do that. Stick that back in, set it down. All right, so we'll take our bolt carrier, a little bit of excess solvent coming out there. All right, so we'll stick our bolt in. Now you can put a little bit of lube in there if you want to. I generally don't. Some people do. Whatever floats your boat. Now it is important that when you put your bolt back in your carrier, it is about the 10 to 11 o'clock position, because that will line up the hole for your cam pin to go down there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Get the camera to focus, but there's that little hole there. If you have it 180 degrees out, it will look like it will go in, but it won't. So it has to be this way. What we're going to do next is take our cam pin, a little bit more grease on there, and we're just going to slather it. I mean, as you can see, there are lots of wear marks on this. Wherever you see wear marks, go ahead and put a bunch of grease or oil. You can use oil, doesn't matter. Stick that back in the bolt. Turn it 90 degrees so that it is oriented like this. All right. Take our firing pin, dry. Do not put lube on your firing pin. I think some people do, but I don't. You don't want to have a slam fire, is what they call that, when you release this onto a chamber, and if there's enough oil or grease or something inside of the firing pin chamber, sometimes it will stick out. I've never had it happen to me, but I've heard of it happening, so I don't mess with that. And put the retaining clip back in. Okay, so now that we've got our bolt carrier group assembled, make sure that you pull that bolt out, right? If it's in, it will not go into the chamber, so you can either pull it out manually or you can give it a flick. Doesn't matter, as long as it's out. And we're going to put just a little bit more grease on the end here, like that, where the bolt carrier slams against the upper receiver. All right, so from here we'll take the bolt carrier group and the upper receiver. Now these have to go together, and there's definitely sliding metal parts in there. So these little pieces right along here, these little sections, whatever you want to call them, as you can see the little bit of wear marks, they definitely need some lube. So we're going to put some on all of these mating surfaces here. Like I said, the wetter the better. I don't care about over lubricating my AR-15. Go ahead and run it wet, get it nice and ooey gooey. I think my rooster might be trying to tell me something, because he will not stop crowing. When it comes to the cam pin in here, just goo it all in there. Doesn't matter if it looks nasty, right? Because it's supposed to be. All right, so now we've got this done. Set that down. Take a little bit of this black rifle balm. Shake it up so that the stick is nice and full of grease, and just apply it to the inside of the receiver where all those mating surfaces are. Now, when I was in the Army, we used to just take a spray bottle of CLP and just kind of, well, spray it in there. It works. You can be very liberal when it comes to applying lubricant inside of your gun. All right, that looks okay. So pull this charging handle almost all the way out. Stick the bolt carrier group in there. Slide it all the way forward. Yep, there's a little bit on the end. Just go ahead and wipe it off. It's not going to hurt anything. All right. So we'll take the lower receiver, which we've already lubricated, cleaned and lubricated the receiver extension with the buffer and the spring inside of there. Put the front pin in first. Close it up at the back pin. Push it in. Now we're going to pull the charging handle. Make sure that it's on safe. Try and pull the trigger. nothing should happen. If something does happen, take it apart. If you hear the hammer fall, take it apart, figure out what's going on. You probably have a broken piece. So nothing happens when I try to pull the trigger. Put it on fire. Hold the trigger to the rear. Run the charging handle. Let it go. You'll hear a click. Put it back on safe. Try to pull the trigger again. Nothing will happen if it's working properly. All right, so from there, the only other thing that I really like to do is take one of these little optic cleaning dealy bobs here. My wife buys these by the bundle or the pack or whatever you want to call them. She buys like a whole bunch of them at a time. They're used for cleaning, you know, camera lenses, glasses, all kinds of anything really with optics. So what I like to do is just take a little bit of this, clean out the front part of my EOTech, put my magnifier to the side, clean the rear of my EOTech, the front of my magnifier, the rear of the magnifier, and that is about it. If your light has a bunch of gunk on it from having a not properly indexed or proper muzzle device, you can go ahead and use some CLP or one of these little lens cleaning wipes works pretty well. Or you can buy a commercially made product, I forget what the name is, that deals specifically with carbon on weapon lights, but you can buy one of those. It doesn't matter. If you want to clean your muzzle device, great. If you don't, whatever. As far as the outside of the gun goes, if you use oil, you will get a lot of seepage between the two pieces here, the upper and lower receiver. You might get some between the handguard and the upper. You might get some, you know, out of everywhere. Doesn't really matter. The cool thing about AR-15s is that if you run them very, very, very wet with lube, you can't hurt them. If you run them without any lube, you will hurt your gun. So hopefully this has been a little bit of a guide or enlightening, or maybe you're going to make fun of me or tell me that I'm doing something wrong. I don't really care. But this is how I clean my AR-15s. This one here feels like snot on glass when you pull the charging handle back, which is what you want. And I will bet my life that this thing will work. If you have any other recommendations or other things that you want to comment about, if you like the video, if you dislike the video, questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and put them in the comments below. All right, and if you like what you saw, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Stay safe.